Good unspecified time period in the future or the past. And welcome to Richard and Karl Presents Deep Space and Dragons.
I'm Karl.
And I'm Richard. And on today's episode, we're going to go through... I'm going to just say we're going to explore the potential characters in the crazy new Nickelodeon fighting game coming out and see which one my co-host Karl has seen, which one I have seen, and if neither of us seen it, we're just kind of doomed. But to start things off, what's new in the Karlverse?
Well, so I seem to have a habit of searching up things that would be available to pick up in the store in the United States, but are not available to pick up in the store in Canada. The first example I would give would be about my sandblaster, where I had wanted to buy a 3/32 of an inch brass tube. And you could just go down to Home Depot in the States and buy those, but Home Depot won't even order them for you in Canada. But more recently, I was trying to hang a sign on a window, and I thought I would just get a suction cup hook. And I was like, oh, well, maybe I can find them at the dollar store. Nope. Maybe I can find them at Staples. So I go to Staples, and I look online. It's like, yeah, a 6-pack for $5. Yeah, that was American Staples. They don't sell those in Canada.
I mean, I'm not sure if it's because I went to Staples pretty recently as my brother, the Panda Bear, is setting up his architecture workshop in his room. Of course, we went to Staples, where I'm like, my computer supplies are a mouse and keyboard. I guess I could get earbuds, as he's trying to find grid paper and canvas paper. And I have to wonder if in my side of the country I have a bigger selection, or if it's literally just, if it's not maple leaf shaped, we don't get it up here.
Well, the suction cup hooks were on the Staples website, but were not for the United States Staples website, but were not on the Canadian Staples website.
Huh. That is...
Same thing with like Old Spice Relax. It's a lavender scented Old Spice. Available.
You just deeply offended a friend of mine who hates lavender with a burning passion, and I'm okay with that. Please continue.
It's available in the United States Walmart, but Canadian Walmart won't even order it in for you.
I mean, Walmart is Walmart, and I will not discuss it because it is Walmart. But Lavender Old Spice seems weird because this might be a strange comparison, but Old Spice always struck me as like, I don't know, scented, like, they try not to be a specific smell. They're like, you smell like random spices, literally. Like we threw some cinnamon and some chicory in there, maybe some barbecue sauce. I don't know.
It matches the deodorant, which is lavender infused, so that's why I wanted it.
I mean, my Old Spice deodorant is wolf blueberry, which is mostly wolf with a hint of blueberry.
But perhaps we should see what's new with you there, Richard.
All right, so I went on a responsible socially distanced picnic yesterday, and I was handed a bunch of grapes. A friend of mine had recently acquired a grape tree with their new property. And one thing that was picked up for this picnic of sorts was competitive axe throwing. And what it is instead of giving us actual axes, because I would be dead, it's like a dartboard of pegs, kind of looks like a curling board. And the axes are designed that when they hit the pegs, the blade splits open a bit to lock on, which means you actually have to throw it with an adequate amount of force. And it was delightful as far as I can say. Axe throwing, badminton, beanbag tossing was a great way to spend the weekend. As for new projects and things, over the course of getting my bachelor's, I have to write so many short stories that I did the math. And if I just put every short story I write together in a book, I will have a 100,000-word short story book from just things I write over the next year. So I'm trying to secretly make every short story about a similar theme so I can glue them together and make a novel.
That would be kind of interesting.
Like 52
Even if it was
Dragon
just an
Tales?
anthology of, Yeah, even if it was just an anthology of short stories that are just on a similar theme, that would be an interesting book to read.
Yeah, I was thinking like 52 Dragon Tales, where each story references a dragon in some way, shape, or form. Be it a dragon uppercut or a literal tiny creme brulee dragon. And to loop back around to group projects, I will be tonight running a one-shot to try out our modified Insult on Campbell's Keep adventure.
Nice.
I got... As soon as you casually mention I run D&D to a reasonable-sized classroom, instantly sign up, no issue at all. One person made a Kenku bard who only does covers of songs, and their goal in life is to create the perfect musical catalog. You have to appreciate that.
That is pretty interesting.
All right. So, I think with our recap done up, just going to put out there that at the end of the episode, we have 2 random questions of the week, 1 dragon question and 1 legitimately random. And if your question is chosen, you can win a free digital copy of the Waltz of Blades. Which, I don't know if you received your free digital copy, but you have a paperback copy you're still working through. So I'm not too concerned about making sure to order yours out personally for last week's question. You will get it and you will love it when it arrives. But to our other listeners, expect much more priority service. So, let's get into it. So, for this week's episode, I have pulled up a list of all the original programming Nicktoons or Nickelodeon has done, because they were releasing an unfortunately good-looking fighting game coming out within the next couple of months. The reason I say this is unfortunate is a lot of times you'll have a video game or movie adaptation or TV show adaptation video game, and they're pretty consistently terrible and you can just ignore them. After watching them break down the gameplay mechanics, the canceling, the hit stun, the wave dashing, the combos, they've actually really tried to engineer a very good Super Smash Bros.-esque fighting game, which I was not expecting them to try with this.
Yeah, considering some of the properties that they have that have already been announced, the roster is quite diverse. But they don't really have that many, like, violent fighters. Yeah, it's just...
Like, this is a product of fascinating nightmare fuel. So, I have this list of Nickelodeon original programming up by premiere date, and let's just see what we understand. So, starting off, and we don't know what characters are going to be in this game, and I will mention the ones we do know, but anything on this list is technically fair game, which is frightening nightmare fuel. Alright, so first show, Doug. It came out when I was 1. Karl, what do you know about the show Doug?
I definitely watched the Doug movie, and I thought it was great.
So, who are these characters for what you remember, and who would you nominate as your fighting game nominee?
Well, I mean, like, Doug himself is probably the most interesting candidate. But, I mean, it was definitely a kids' show, so it was largely about their imaginary adventures.
Fair enough. Is there any imaginary swords, imaginary dragons? Are we talking, like how deep dive can we get into that character?
Well, I mean, I was also 1 when it was premiered, so, I also, I mean, I'm surprised looking through this list how many I actually do know, but my parents weren't really big on letting us watch a lot of TV. So, like, I've seen a few episodes of here or there. Doug, I haven't really rewatched anything recently. The number one thing is I just remember Super Doug, where he put on a headband and a red cape.
I mean,
so
that's beautiful.
Why I'm like, Super Doug could be cool.
That would work elegantly. I, unfortunately, other than the name, don't remember that show. But when we get to our next item on the list, I remember Rugrats. That aired on YTV. Probably like half their time slot was Rugrats episodes.
Rugrats obviously had more enduring charm than Doug. Although No, Rugrats have gotten like 2 or 3 movies.
Apparently the finale for Rugrats was 2004, when the finale for Doug was 1994, and they came out at the same time. So Rugrats lasted a decade longer.
Yeah. I mean, so like I said, I've seen a few shows here and there. I've found, watching babies to be annoying, personally. And also, the character Chucky was, like, the most annoying character.
Oh, I agree.
And in Spanish, in the Rugrats show, his name is Carlito.
That's
and,
so much better.
I find that personally offensive.
Oh, no. Oh, that took a moment.
I'm not actually offended, but the most annoying character almost sharing a name with me is like, no, I'm not into that.
Like, that's why I'm kind of grateful for my imperialistic older generation name that's rarely used, because there's very few Richards. You'll run into a Ricky. You'll run into a Ricardo. You don't run into a Richard, because Richards are pretty much doomed to wear sweater vests and teach classes, which is the objective.
How many Ricardos have you run into? 3. Oh, wow.
I know, right? So, to loop back around to this Rugrats thing, I don't recall almost anything from Rugrats, on account of being a baby watching a show about babies. But the character that made into this fighting game is a dinosaur named Riptar. And the only thing I remember with confidence about this dinosaur is they did a promotional song for Riptar on Ice, which effectively would be the equivalent of Godzilla on Ice. And that is delightful and filled me with the purest joy. So my brain has like the little jingle of Riptar of Ice stuck in it for literally ever. So I understand why they didn't put small infants in a fighting game to beat to death. Sorry, you can't do that to Carlito and get your vengeance. But they picked something iconic enough from their imagery that I'm like, yeah, no, off-brand Godzilla with ice skates, I want that as my fighting game character. Triple Axel Godzilla kick is just fantastic.
That would be pretty hilarious. Hopefully they reference that particular special in the game.
I really do. So next on our list is the Ren and Stimpy show, which I have always believed, and feel free to correct me in the comments, is what meth must look like. Like, if you do a bunch of meth, and then life happens, it would look similar to watching Ren and Stimpy. I've never done meth, I don't know. Maybe LSD? I've never done that either. Severe head trauma I've had happen? That's the closest I've got to reality looking like Ren and Stimpy.
I don't know if I ever actually watched the show, maybe like 1 or 2 episodes, but they did have a few platforming video games for the Super Nintendo. Which nostalgia, that's just my favorite system. And I definitely agree. They're not exactly nightmare fuel, but they're not exactly normal scenarios.
Well, they definitely went for the almost like the Cuphead style animation, where it's like the older, more bouncy fluid animation, where because they had less frames, they give it like more jiggly motion, as it were. I don't know how aptly I'm describing it. But they went with just horrifying visuals on this show. But apparently in the game, they work as a duo where they'll like use each other as weapons and stuff. Like Ren and Stimpy as a character.
A lot of fun. The game was a lot of fun, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Or unless you're talking about the fighting game now.
Oh, the new fighting game as well uses them as like a duo character. Alright, so our next show on this list is Rocko's Modern Life. I've never seen it, but apparently relatively recent. Well, I saw like an episode or 2. And the main thing I know this series from is apparently they like to put adult jokes in it that the internet enjoys throwing on the internet now. And apparently the main character was implied to work on a phone sex line. And that is the only thing I know about this show.
Yeah, I mean, I also don't really know anything about Rocko's Modern Life. I feel like I probably have seen 1 or 2 episodes, but of the shows that we've gone through so far, it's definitely the one that has the least, like, I literally don't remember anything about it.
Yeah, apparently there's like some censorship issues with it because they tried to lean for the adult jokes, and this is just kind of me reading off the page about it.
Yeah.
So I feel like they're going to avoid that one in their all-star fighting game. They probably don't want to draw attention to that. So
Fair enough.
next thing is Aaahh! Real Monsters. I have no earthly idea what that is. You got anything?
I also have no idea what it is. I mean, it definitely sounds like something that they could draw from for their fighting game, but...
Yeah, apparently it also got a video game on the SNES and the Sega Mega Drive once upon a time.
I know, I've definitely... in the past, when it was much easier to get emulations and ROMs and stuff for the Super Nintendo, I definitely have downloaded entire collections that are just like, Real Monsters, and I see it in the list. But it didn't even pique enough of my interest to try it out as a free emulation.
Fair enough. The most noteworthy thing is it starts with 3 A's, putting it at the top of alphabetical lists. I'm sure someone in the comments will give a rant about how this was their favorite show and how we're classless monsters, and nothing would make me happier to be corrected on this issue. Alright.
Yeah.
Next...
We are real monsters for sure.
Absolutely. Next on our list is Hey Arnold. That I do recall quite accurately. At this point, I would have been 6 when it came out, but because Canada, I feel like a lot of these cartoons we got a few years later. And it ran till 2004, which would be a reasonable amount of time for my memory to go back. So... yeah, I mean, Hey Arnold, so I don't know how old Family Guy is, but I feel like Stewie Griffin is a reference to the main character, Arnold. I mean, my next little exposition about this was going to be how the most iconic thing is he had a football-shaped head. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. And I think it predates it. And I mean, Family Guy was not subtle about taking things they wanted from other shows.
That's true.
We could do an entire half-hour episode where I do nothing but complain about Family Guy, and it would be justified. Apparently, Hey Arnold got a movie as recent as 2017.
It's 2017?
Yeah.
Really?
So, for the fighting game that's coming out, they actually made his... I'm hesitant to say love interest. I'm going to more say borderline stalker who has serious issues into a playable fighting game character. So Arnold of Hey Arnold didn't make it into the fighting game, but Helga did.
To be fair, Arnold was not a particularly violent character.
No. I mean, I can't remember one character's name, but one of my favorite scenes in that show is they were trying to build the world's biggest pizza pocket. Because to make a world record, you have to choose something absurd, since all the sensible records have been done. And each character, that's where they displayed each character's special skills. And one character's ability was the ability to cut a zucchini really fast with car keys. And it just always made me happy that one character's super specific, nonsensical skill was directly relevant to this task. It's like you have an encyclopedia knowledge of sauces and you can chop a zucchini with car keys in under 30 seconds. And that's just fantastic. And I do remember watching the first Hey Arnold movie where they tried to like go big and dramatic with it to explain why his parents are never around. And then they went like full Disney movie, like they died as a volcano erupted kind of drama.
Wow.
Yeah. It went in directions I was not expecting. Spoilers for a 10-year-old, 20-year-old show? All right, next on the list we have a show called Kablam. I got nothing for that one, but it went till 2000.
Well, that's only a 4-year runtime, so obviously it wasn't super popular because I also don't have much recollection. But, I mean, again, like I'm surprised with how many I do know because of how little TV my parents let me watch.
That's fair. Like, I feel like you've just passively absorbed a lot.
Just as a little side note, I mean, I don't think my parents are crazy, but they wouldn't let me watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because they didn't like the Buddhist elements of it.
That is... So, as the audience is not aware, but Karl definitely is, my parents pretty much offset a lot of the raising of me to my brother, so we would watch cartoons together. So very little was done to prevent me from watching a truly stupid amount of TV growing up. because they were both out working construction, and me and my brother were left to our own devices, and we're not particularly exciting people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to this day, it wouldn't be unreasonable for us to marathon a new animated series, since he is my roommate at the moment. Eat some popcorn, binge watch a new animated series, complain about how anime's just gotten worse, and then move on with our lives.
Sounds about right.
So after a little search, apparently Klablam was a anime sketch comedy style show. So apparently it was more like a collection of short films, and so even if we saw it, we probably wouldn't be able to recognize it.
Fair enough.
So the next on our list is a show called The Angry Beavers, which have not been confirmed for the fighting game yet, but I desperately want. The show followed two Angry Beavers, one angry one and one stupid one, and that was the entire premise, and sometimes there's a beauty in simplicity.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely really liked Angry Beavers. For some reason, I feel like that must have been made by the Canadian division of Nickelodeon. Or is Nickelodeon just Canadian in general?
No, it was apparently American, and the story took place in Oregon, apparently.
Oh, really?
So we all assumed it was Canadian because they took one of our national mascots and threw it on the cover. But no, it was an American show that tricked us.
Those jerks.
Agreed. But yeah, it was a delightful series. Like, I would like that. That would be a pretty good shout out because it did not have a Super Rank run, 1997 to 2001. But I would be thrilled if that got a mention. It made its way into this fighting game that I'm going to begrudgingly buy when it falls on sale because I like fighting you at Smash Bros. I like beating you at Smash Bros. I want to hit you with a off-brand Godzilla triple axle skating kick. Also, it has fully functional rollback netcode programmed into it.
Rollback netcode.
So, for fighting games, there's two kind of ways you can fight online lag. There's conventional methods of you just teleport around randomly. What rollback netcode does is it actually calculates the lag spikes and effectively, say I punch you and then you get hit because of lag. It actually rolls back the game in real time and resynchronizes us. So it's like I'd punch you and then my character would almost rewind a minute to keep it fair so no one gets a lag advantage. It's been... I did not quite do that explanation justice, but it's been showing up more and more in competitive fighting games. I'm like, wait, but you are Nickelodeon dumb novelty game. Why good coding? Which brings us to our next show, CatDog. Did you ever watch CatDog?
I did not watch CatDog, but one of my favorite theory channels did a theory on whether or not you could actually create a CatDog.
No.
And as portrayed in the show, it's not happening.
No, but it did make it straight up in as a fighting game character. 100% CatDog is in the roster. And I know you might be picturing like a fox, like an animal halfway between a cat and dog if you're not familiar with the show. No, it is half its body and 2 legs are a cat, and the other half of his body and 2 legs are a dog, and it is a horrifying nightmare amalgamation of despair.
Okay, so I mean, I hate to ask, but I have to go here. It's because it's the front half of a dog and the front half of a cat attached at the torso.
Nope.
Do they ever?
Nope.
They don't ever
Nope.
ever deal with that?
Nope. Move on. It's a cartoon. Just move on.
Okay.
All right, so our next show on the list is The Wild Thornberrys.
You just skipped over. Oh yeah, cartoons.
Oh shoot. Well, I have no idea what that is. Do you know what that is?
No, it sounds like another.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Sketch show.
That is what I thought. I skipped it because I fully believed in our hearts that neither of us knew anything about it, and I stand by it.
Okay. Well, I mean, according to Wikipedia, it is the origin of the Fairly OddParents, Chalk Zone, and My Life as a Teenage Robot.
Cool, because we're going to talk about all of those in their respective categories without having to go into this compilation show.
Yeah, I just find it interesting. Is it's TV's biggest animation development program ever, according to Wikipedia.
That's kind of crazy because no clue.
Anyway,
Man.
Yeah, never seen it for sure.
All right, so next up we have Wild Thornberrys, which is basically Steve Irwin but animated comedy. Does that sound about right? Does that accurately sum up the entire premise of the show?
I would definitely say it does.
So they did actually get a character from that into the fighting game, as he moves around and does animal impersonations and has a head much bigger than the rest of his body, and it just looks so uncomfortable paired next to other characters. Because Nigel Thornberry is just a terrifying looking character. Although you do get to be a British aristocrat style character who does a woodpecker impression as an attack. So as far as fighting game character creativity, hard to beat that one.
No, I mean, I hate to be a downer here, but this list is actually fairly extensive. I don't even think we're halfway through yet.
All right, so let's try and ramp up our pace a bit. All right, we're just going to go a simple yes-no. Rocket Power. Remember anything about it?
Nope.
Apparently it was sports. As chosen by Ginger. Remember anything about it?
Nope.
I have to assume from the name it was a diary of some character named Ginger.
Probably.
Invader Zim. Greatest piece of animation ever created. Full stop.
Well, I mean, maybe I'll have to actually watch it because I've only kind of absorbed information about it passively.
It's almost as good as Futurama.
Huh.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
Zim
right.
made it into the game because it'd be insane not to. Also, it had like a trend where absolutely everyone in grade 12 was super obsessed with Invader Zim while I was going to grade 12. Could not explain why. But then I got on board and enjoyed it. All right.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next one. Fairly Odd Parents. I'm pretty sure that's still going.
And it's also probably one of my favorite Nicktoons anyways, personally.
I mean, I think we can take an entire minute here so you can sum it up a bit. Let's hear your pitch meeting kind of 30-second, you're trying to sell this show to me as a developer. What's your show about?
Well, I mean, it's about a small child who has a mean babysitter, but he has some goldfish that turn out to actually be fairies, and they're his godparents, so they help him grant wishes, and obviously the most significant portion of the show is be careful what you wish for, because his wishes often backfire.
Oh, it was such a good show. So there's so many characters I'd love to see from that in this fighting game. No representatives been announced. But first, Cosmo the Fairy and Wanda the Fairy, both fantastic additions to a fighting game if they got added in. There's an in-the-universe superhero called the Crimson Chin that's somewhere between Daredevil and Batman with a giant chin. I would also love to see that in a fighting game. And I would love to see the fairy-obsessed math teacher with a butterfly net screaming angrily as a fighting game. He's basically animated Waluigi. It's delightful.
Yeah, the math teacher is pretty hilarious.
Alright, next on our list is Chalk Zone. Do you recall it at all?
Never actually watched it. Did watch a YouTube video about its development cycle and the sudden change in tone and pacing and stuff. And the author of the video really liked the show, but felt like it got destroyed by development hell.
That's fair. That can happen when your vision is stifled by bottom lines. Apparently it managed to win some awards. I don't know enough about it to really give any further from that, so we're just going to move on to Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. Ever have a show where the name just describes the entire premise instantly?
Yeah, I mean, apparently Dexter's Laboratory is not a Nicktoon.
No, which is why they made Jimmy Neutron, which is their Dexter's Laboratory, just straight up.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like it was actually slightly worse than Dexter's Laboratory.
Everything was slightly worse than Dexter's Laboratory. I'd dip out on this podcast to go watch an episode of Dexter's Laboratory. Alright, let's try and get through a last couple of these before we get to our random question of the day. Since this list, we managed to make it to 2002.
Yeah, starting in 1991, we got 2002, and it goes all the way up to 2019, apparently.
Right, so here's some highlights that are on this list that I want to point out. I really enjoyed My Life as a Teenage Robot. Its premise was...
I also really enjoyed it.
Yes, it had robots, missiles, and teenage angst. What's not to love?
Right?
Next is Danny Phantom, which I think was Nickelodeon's first attempt into a longer, more serialized show that had a more coherent plot with slightly older characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Danny Phantom was delightful. It was it was almost like closer to a Marvel show in tone, but was still very clearly a slapstick cartoon. The next big thing on this list, because we got a whole lot of I know nothing about, we got Avatar: The Last Airbender. Feel free to tune back to episode 2 where we broke that down pretty thoroughly of our podcasts.
Right.
Legend of Korra, the sequel to that. At some point, they acquired the Ninja Turtles and threw them in their fighting game.
How could you skip over Kung Fu Panda Legends of Awesomeness?
Because that's cheating. Nickelodeon, you don't get a say you get Kung Fu Panda when DreamWorks did the heavy lifting. Kung Fu Panda is delightful. Kung Fu Panda is amazing. Perhaps we'll do a DreamWorks episode in the future where I can discuss how Jack Black played himself and it was so perfect. But Nick Animation does not get the credit because so much of that was handed to them. Like, if someone handed me, write a novel for Kung Fu Panda 4, that's the best thing that could happen to me in my life, because it's already there. You just need to, like, make more episodes. You got your character setting, plot, lore, wushu finger grabs. It's good to go.
But I would definitely say after 2005, I feel like I just kind of did not watch many more Nicktoons.
I agree. Like, it's kind of crazy, because when we go to what's currently airing right now, up at the very top of this list, they brought SpongeBob back to life. Also, we made it through this list without mentioning SpongeBob. We don't have to.
Well, he's not on the list that we were looking at specifically because...
It's still airing.
Yeah, it's still airing.
It hasn't stopped. So...
And it has, like, 4 movies?
4 movies, and it currently has 2 spin-offs. They did the Big Bang Theory thing where they're doing young SpongeBob, and then they gave Patrick his own show. Apparently Rugrats has resumed as well.
Yeah.
So,
right, then.
To pivot from our Nickelodeon timeline, it turns out that trying to do every single animated show that could make it into this video game was not a reasonable task, but we hit some good points.
I agree.
At some point, I'll probably talk more about Danny Phantom, because I really think it was a precursor to letting them get away with making Avatar. And
quite possibly.
No need to go into Avatar and Legend of Korra. My Life as a Teenage Robot was fantastic as well.
Mm-hmm.
We did mention in an earlier episode the horrifying nightmare crossover of Jimmy Neutron and Very OddParents.
Yeah, the Jimmy Turner Power Hour.
Which their animation styles did not match. It was horrifying nightmare fuel, and I really hope both of them make it into this fighting game so I can reenact this night terror. Alright, so our random question of the week comes from a Toriko? Tokyo? I know that they're named based on a awesome character from Rurouni Kenshin, but my ability to pronounce things is terrible. But
Fair
their
enough.
question is a hot dog a sandwich?
So, I mean, again, I watch a lot of YouTube, and one of my favorite theory channels, it's called Food Theory. And so, they tackled this question, and I am relatively satisfied with their answer. In the end, they used the textbook definition of a sandwich,
Right.
which is 2 slices of bread with something spread thoroughly between, a thin layer of something spread thoroughly between. And so, by that definition, a hot dog is not a sandwich. And I would tend to agree, because in daily life, if someone offers me a hot dog, they're not like, hey, do you want this sandwich? No, they say, do you want a hot dog? I've never actually heard anyone call a hot dog a sandwich.
My retort, or rebuttal as it were. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, he bought
that's a deep
hot
dive.
dog. He bought a hot dog for a female reporter, and then he tried to call it a whole sausage and tried to tell her to eat the whole sausage. We'll take that as you will.
No.
And she kept trying to refer to it as a sandwich because she was uncomfortable with him referring to it as a sausage.
Okay,
But
so
so that's the only exception. That's the only time I've ever heard a hot dog called a sandwich.
I need to defend the hot dog sandwich right now, and here's how I'm going to do it. So
Okay.
you may have grew up in your high-class, ritzy Saskatoon manor and always had hot dog buns for your hot dogs, which I have to assume were 100% beef, cooked over a hot dog rotation machine. But I grew up in the sticks of suburban Calgary, and sometimes you didn't have any hot dog buns. So you would cut the hot dog in half on a horizontal line. You would take 2 of them and it'd create 4 like a layer, and you'd put it between 2 pieces of bread. I conjecture that eating a hot dog in that style is a hot dog sandwich.
Yeah, you definitely made a hot dog sandwich, but when I didn't have hot dog buns, I used a single piece of bread and still ate them tubular.
You are a fool.
In which case it was still not a sandwich.
I stand by the hot dog sandwich being a beautiful culinary invention. Yes, it was forged out of necessity. And yes, it may defeat maybe the inefficient way because you could just use a single piece of bread like a hot dog bun. But I stand by the hot dog sandwich and all its glory. And with that, we move into our random dragon question of the week, which I'm going to pull up here and not lose this week. Loading time. Dragons, are they better than elves? That is your question. There's a bunch more subtext to that, but I'm taking the first chunk of this question. It follows up to in literature and roleplay, are they better? So yeah, Karl, are dragons better than elves?
I would say no. I mean, they're vastly biologically superior for sure. But they kind of just rest on their laurels and don't improve themselves. You know, they'll get a treasure hoard and they'll just go to sleep for a couple centuries, and then they wake up and suddenly there's technology and they're shot in the heart and dead.
So first off, you clearly haven't seen Reign of Fire, because what actually happens is the dragons come up, they burn all of us to ash, they get the nutrients out of the ash, they conquer the world, we lose. I did not quite see the ending of the movie, I just assumed the dragons won and wiped out mankind.
Okay.
So, I will say this, though. As much as I'm team dragons, dragons are great. When asked on first date what's my favorite animal, I unflinchingly say dragons. When I requested to have a dragon breadsped, I said I'd be dumped, and I seriously considered the dragon breadsped anyway. I will say this. Elves, in their purest form, might be less interesting, but you can do a lot with it. Like, elves themselves have inspired so many interesting things. And to go into the deep space with the dragons here, if it weren't for elves, we wouldn't have Vulcans. Because Vulcans are space elves. And elves have like a certain mysticism to them that I'm not entirely sure Smaug could have carried Lord of the Rings on his own back. So I'm going to say dragons are great. They're awesome. But I don't want to have them at the expense of elves. Because a lot of things I've really enjoyed have had elves or elf-ish things in them. Like, if I have to lose dragons or the Legend of Zelda franchise, oof.
What a way to take a non-position.
Fine then. Well, my position's obviously pro-dragons. Okay, dragons are better than elves. Alright, I tried to come up with a counterbalance, but dragons are better than elves. That's just... Dragons are better than me.
Well, and even keep your comments coming. Post either random dragon questions or just random questions in general. And if your questions are selected, you'll get a free e-book copy of Waltz of Blades
Deluxe. And Tokyo Saito, expect your email box soon and enjoy your free copy. And to everybody else, dragons are better than elves, and have yourselves a lovely week.
Thanks for listening.
Goodbye.